Chapter 542. When Snake brought Gu Meng Meng back to the cave, Elvis and Leah had already disappeared. Gu Meng Meng wanted to ask, but she did not dare to open her mouth when she saw Snake's "if you dare to ask, I will kill them immediately" expression. But looking at the roasted meat that was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, Gu Meng Meng felt much more at ease. Other than Leah, no one else could roast meat of this standard. He still had the mood to roast meat, which meant that he and Elvis were at least safe. With this understanding, Gu Meng Meng felt much more relaxed. Once she relaxed, Gu Meng Meng also started to feel hungry. After all, she had only eaten a little fruit for the past 2 to 3 days. Gu Meng Meng squatted beside the roasted meat, looked at Snake and asked, "Is this for me?" Snake replied with a cold "yeah," then sat at the side and watched Gu Meng Meng eat heartily. Snake did not know why, but he just felt that the food in Gu Meng Meng's hands was exceptionally delicious, so he leaned closer, opened his mouth and said, "Aw." Gu Meng Meng looked at Snake's pleading expression and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why was this fellow's personality so polarizing? When he was angry, he could not differentiate between friend and foe, and was unreasonable. But when he was calm, he could look so cute and arrogant, making people speechless. Gu Meng Meng tore off a piece of roasted meat and sent it into Snake's mouth. Snake chewed it seriously, then swallowed it. It was quite delicious, right? Perhaps, there was no taste of meat, and it was not as fresh as eating immediately after being slaughtered. It was also a little hot, the texture was really ordinary, but when paired with Gu Meng Meng's smiling face, it seemed to have a chemical reaction, making it so unpalatable and unique. Gu Meng Meng stared at Snake's face for a long time, but could not tell whether he liked it or not. Or did he not like it? "Do you still want more?" Gu Meng Meng asked. Snake shook his head and said, "You eat, I will watch you eat." Gu Meng Meng did not stand on ceremony with him, this was prepared by Leah for her. Gu Meng Meng's mood improved as she ate the roasted meat in big mouthfuls. After Gu Meng Meng was full, Snake sat beside her and asked, "Are you afraid of snakes?" Gu Meng Meng nodded her head honestly and said, "I'm not afraid of many animals, but snakes are definitely at the king level. When I went to the zoo, there was a picture of a huge python with a human. As long as I saw it, I would run away and not dare to challenge it. Just the thought of a snake touching me makes my whole body uncomfortable. Hey, look, even my hair is standing on end." Snake looked at the hairs on Gu Meng Meng's arms that were standing up straight and he was a little disappointed. "Wolves are also very ferocious animals, why don't I see you being afraid?" Gu Meng Meng smiled. "Who says I'm not afraid? You don't even know how scared I was the first time I saw Elvis's original body. I almost fainted. For a very long time, I always felt that Elvis and Leah were keeping me as a reserve food and would eat me anytime." Upon hearing Gu Meng Meng's words, Snake felt much better. "In the future, will you slowly stop being afraid of snakes?" Snake asked. Gu Meng Meng thought for a while and shook her head. "Not sure, I am really, not afraid of snakes." Snake frowned and asked, "Are you afraid of me?" Gu Meng Meng did not answer but asked back, "Do you want me to be afraid of you?" Snake remained silent for a long time and did not reply. He just looked at Gu Meng Meng quietly. Aside from the topic. Chapter 543. Gu Meng Meng felt pressured by Snake's stare. She smacked her lips and sorted out her words before saying, "Actually, you are quite nice when you are not angry. Although you are a little awkward, you are not hard to get along with. But when you are angry, tsk, you are definitely possessed by a demon king. It is too scary." Snake looked at Gu Meng Meng and suddenly smiled. "It is good that you know to be afraid. Don't provoke me in the future." Gu Meng Meng cupped her fists and said, "All right, mighty king." Snake was amused by her comical look and the lump of stuffy air in his chest slowly dissipated. He cleared his throat and asked, "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere else?" Gu Meng Meng seriously felt around and said, "I just feel that I do not have much strength. Everything else is fine." Snake said, "You were the one who bit me, but you still had to ask me to save you. Why are you so useless?" Gu Meng Meng was speechless. She turned her face to the side and refused to talk to Snake. Snake stretched out his hand and shouted, "Tu Meng." Gu Meng Meng reflexively placed her hand on Snake's and was instantly held. Gu Meng Meng really wanted to give herself a slap. Where was her dignity? Where was her dignity? Snake smiled faintly and said, "It is finally warm again." Gu Meng Meng glanced sideways at Snake's cold face and asked, "Today, must have made you worried too?" Snake's expression froze and he said, "No." Gu Meng Meng could not help but laugh. She did not expose him or go along with him. She just looked at Snake. Snake cleared his throat and said, "I saved you because I have something to ask you. So I cannot let you die for now." Gu Meng Meng nodded and said, "What do you want to ask?" Snake was silent for a moment before he slowly opened his mouth and said, "I want to know, that world of yours, what is it like?" Gu Meng Meng was taken aback. She asked tentatively, "You mean, the world of the beast deity?" Snake shook his head and said, "I know that you are not from the beast world but another independent world. The people there do not know how to transform and know many strange things. But their physiques are extremely weak. Not to mention orcs, even ordinary wild beasts can easily kill them." Gu Mingming's expression gradually lost control as she looked at Snake with a heated gaze. How did you know?" Snake looked back at Gu Meng Meng and said, "My mother beast is the previous messenger of the beast deity." Cough, cough, cough. Gu Meng Meng choked and coughed until her face turned red and she could not say a word. "Your mother is a joker, but you're a freakishly strong tsundere. This gene had mutated, right? Wasn't the difference too big?" Tu Meng. Snake's expression was rather solemn. He wanted to pat Gu Mingming's back to soothe her breathing, but he realized that the spot where he had bitten himself was still bleeding. He retracted his hand forcefully and could only watch as Gu Meng Meng coughed like a dog in front of him. "Wait a minute." Gu Meng Meng finally stopped coughing and turned to look at Snake. "The previous messenger of the beast deity is your mother, so... Leader, how old are you this year?" Snake cleared his throat and said evasively, "About, over 1,000 years old." Chapter 544. Snake used his uninjured hand to hold on to Gu Mingming's little hand that was poking his face. He gestured for her to sit properly and said, "I have never seen my mother before. When she died, I was still an egg. All my memories of my mother originated from my father's inherited memories. I don't know if it is because of my father's memories. I am very curious about her." Gu Meng Meng was taken aback. She said with a face full of shock, "Don't tell me you mistook your father's feelings for your mother as your feelings for your mother." Gu Meng Meng was surprised that her tongue did not get knotted after she finished her sentence like a tongue twister. Snake looked at Gu Meng Meng. After a long while, he shook his head and said, "I didn't know in the past. But now I know that there is a difference between curiosity and liking someone." Gu Meng Meng sat beside Snake and patted him on the shoulder. "Yeah, you must have the right values. You must have the basic ethics." Snake nodded. Gu Meng Meng sat beside Snake and patted his shoulder. Snake sneered. He poked Gu Mingming's little head and said, "Acting mature in front of me. Thinking of Snake's 1,000-odd years of age, Gu Meng Meng still sat obediently and said seriously, No, I don't dare to." Snake raised his brows and said, "Are you despising me for being old?" Gu Meng Meng pursed her lips. She could not hold back her laughter and said, Sorry, I have never seen a demon who has lived for more than 1,000 years. I am too excited, let me laugh for a while." Seeing Gu Meng Meng squatting at the side and laughing like a dog, the corners of Snake's lips curled up unknowingly. He just quietly watched her laugh like a fool. When she was tired of laughing, she leaned against the stone platform and looked up at Snake. She said, "Sorry, I have laughed enough." "That, ha ha ha, let me laugh for a while more." Snake was not angry. He just quietly watched Gu Meng Meng laugh until she could not make a sound. When she was laughing so hard that she couldn't make a sound, he poked her head and said, "Stop laughing, or I'll eat you up." Gu Meng Meng tried to hold back her laughter. She calmed herself down and said, "Your face does not look more than 20 years old. It is really too deceptive." So I could not hold it in and laughed a little exaggeratedly. "Old man, please forgive me." Snake raised his eyebrows, gritted his teeth and repeated, "Elder." Gu Meng Meng felt a chill down her spine. She smiled apologetically and said, "Leader, I was wrong. I am an old lady, I am an old lady." Snake pinched her little face and did not argue with her. He only said quietly, "I really want to know what those things in my memory are like. That's why I once traveled around the beast world but couldn't find a female like her. Later on, I forgot how I came to this place and unknowingly, I had stayed here for a very long time. Then this place was called the Snake King Valley. There was obviously no one who could stop me, but I could not even take a step out of this place." Gu Meng Meng listened attentively to Snake's words and waited for him to finish before asking, "You joined forces with Cole because you were curious about your mother?" Snake was displeased as he raised his head and said, "It's not an alliance, he's the one presenting me a treasure." Gu Meng Meng pointed at her own nose and said, "The treasure he offered is me." Snake nodded and said, "He said he would bring the new messenger of the beast deity to me and present her to me. I accepted, that's all." Chapter 545. Would you believe me if I said it had nothing to do with me? Snake asked instead of answering. Gu Meng Meng nodded and said, "As long as you say it, I will believe you." Snake asked, "Why?" Gu Meng Meng smiled faintly and said, "With your abilities, you don't have to go through so much trouble to catch me. Even if you don't use the little wolves to threaten me, I have nowhere to escape to." Snake curled his lips and raised his brows. "Since you already know, why are you still asking?" Gu Meng Meng shrugged and said, "No matter what, you have to give people a chance to explain themselves." Snake did not say anything and just looked at Gu Meng Meng quietly. After a long silence, he said, "It's not me." Gu Meng Meng smiled and nodded, saying, "Then I have no more questions. What do you want to know about that world?" "I can tell you everything I know." Snake thought about it but shook his head. Gu Meng Meng was confused. "Aren't you very curious about the world your mother originally lived in?" Snake looked down at his and Gu Meng Meng's shadows under the moonlight and remained silent for a moment before saying, "I used to be very curious, but I don't know when it started. I only remember that I was very curious, but I can't even remember what I was curious about." Gu Meng Meng thought about it and agreed. It had been over 1,000 years, any kind of curiosity should have been washed away in the face of such a long time. Using her shoulder to bump Snake, Gu Meng Meng said, "Your mother is super funny, do you know that?" Snake looked at Gu Meng Meng's sparkling eyes and shook his head lightly, saying, "In my memory, she was very serious, very dignified and always looked like she was out of reach. Even when there were no outsiders around, she would always have a lot on her mind. Even my beast father did not know what she was thinking about. As far as I can remember, she has never smiled like this before, nor has she ever cried as freely as you do. She never let others know what she cared about, what she liked or hated. She was completely different from you." Gu Meng Meng looked at Snake with a "whoever believes you is an idiot" expression and said, "You mean to say that your mother is the one who walks the cold and aloof path, while I am the snail running on the joking path, right?" Snake nodded his head slowly with a sincere expression. Gu Meng Meng slapped her thighs and jumped up. She had wanted to stand opposite Snake, but her little hand was still in his grasp and she could not pull it out. As a result, this jump almost caused her to fall. Snake instinctively reached out to catch her, but realized that the wound on his arm had not healed completely, so he could only forcefully retract his outstretched hand. Then, he used all his strength to pull her little hand back into his arms in a parabola. Gu Mengmeng only felt her vision blur, and by the time she stabilized herself, she was already lying on Snake's chest. She raised her little face and blinked her eyes at Snake's green eyes that were inches away from hers. Clearing her throat, she said, "All right, I am a joker." Snake smiled faintly and placed Gu Mengmeng in his arms. "Sit down and talk. Don't move." Gu Mengmeng shifted her butt and said, I can just sit at the side and talk." Snake retracted his arm and held Gu Mengmeng tightly. "It's safest in my arms. You won't get hurt." Gu Mengmeng sighed and accepted her fate helplessly. Who asked her to almost fall flat on her face when she tried to stand up just now? Passive, too passive. Chapter 546. Your mother is the messenger of the beast deity and I am also the messenger of the beast deity, so we are colleagues. Shouldn't you call me auntie? Gu Mengmeng put on the kind smile of an old auntie and said, "Come, call me Auntie Mengmeng." Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng as if he was looking at an idiot and said, "The so-called messenger of the beast deity is just someone who transmigrated from another world to complete a certain mission. You and my mother beast are probably not that close." As Snake said, he pinched Gu Mengmeng's chin and squinted his eyes, saying with a faint smile, "Moreover, I am over 1,000 years old. Do you dare to agree to call you auntie?" Gu Mengmeng pouted and said, "Forget it, the cost of being your auntie is too high. You are old, so you are right, don't take advantage of your seniority, please continue." Snake sneered and released Gu Mengmeng's chin. He rested his head on Gu Mengmeng's shoulder and his gaze landed on the mating mark on her collarbone. "Tell me, how did you transmigrate?" Snake asked nonchalantly. Gu Mengmeng felt even more aggrieved when she mentioned this and said indignantly, "I also want to know why I transmigrated. Moreover, your mother at least brought along 300 poems of the Tang dynasty and a ballpoint pen when she transmigrated. I only wore a damn bikini. If a messenger of the beast deity really descends after 1,000 years, she will definitely think that I am more of a joke than your mother." "Bikini?" Snake raised his eyes and asked, emphasizing the main point. Gu Mengmeng nodded perfunctorily and said, "Yeah, it's the clothes I wear when I swim. I originally wanted to confess to my heartthrob senior, TSK, this is even more troublesome. I said it the last time and Elvis and Leah are still trying to find out about senior from time to time. I feel like I had an affair but I clearly didn't do anything, yet I can't explain it clearly. Sobs, 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 I feel bitter in my heart but I won't say it, won't say it." Snake laughed and said, "But you have already said it." Gu Mengmeng rolled her eyes at Snake and did not continue the conversation. She changed the topic and continued discussing your mother. Do you know, your mother is too talented. Using a book of 300 poems of the Tang dynasty to deceive the Sauter tribe for over 1,000 years, that Cole, when he was verifying my identity previously, the secret code was hoeing rice at noon. Tisk, shouldn't you be a little more formal when you want to verify the password? Something like, the heavenly king covers the earth tiger or the pagoda suppresses the river demon or something. At the very least, it should be open sesame, right? How could it be hoeing in the middle of the day? I think you're definitely not close to your mother. What do you mean by aloof or dignified? It must be a misunderstanding." Snake nodded and said, "I have never met her before." Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and looked at Snake apologetically. "I'm sorry, it was a slip of the tongue. I didn't mean to make you sad." Snake tilted his head and looked at Gu Mingming's bright eyes, asking, I'm sad. Why? Gu Mengmeng blinked her eyes, not knowing how to answer the question. She thought to herself, your mother has been dead for 1,000 years. Isn't it too late for me to say I'm sorry for her? Chapter 547. Oh. Gu Mengmeng rubbed her face and adjusted her expression before looking at Snake and asking, since you have your father's memories, can you analyze it with me? Why did your mother make others offer 300 poems of the Tang dynasty, as some esoteric manual? Snake could not help but laugh as he looked at Gu Mengmeng, to protect you. Me? Gu Mengmeng pointed at her own nose and asked in confusion. Snake nodded his head and continued, the so-called messengers of the beast deity are mostly smart but not powerful enough. If you do not have an insurance mechanism to prove your identity, there is a high possibility that you will lose your life before becoming a messenger of the beast deity. My mother beast left behind that book and a foolishly loyal tribe to be your protective talisman. It's a pity that the current tribe leader is not a loyal one. Gu Mengmeng nodded her head in agreement and said, but your mother is already very nature-defying. Solder can survive for thousands of years with the name of the messengers of the beast deity and no one dares to offend them. This shows how awesome your mother is. Snake rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, didn't you say she was a joker just now? Gu Mengmeng laughed awkwardly and said, you can't blame me for this. Do you know what the prayers and dance for blessings that your mother has passed down are? What the F*** King Divine Song, Little Apple, and it's even in English. Let me tell you, if it wasn't for the bunch of girls in my hostel who let loose, I would never know this song even if I died. Snake raised his eyebrows and said, oh. Let me hear it. Gu Mengmeng had the urge to bite her tongue and commit suicide. She shook her head and said, no, that divine song of the square does not suit my cold temperament. Snake raised his head and said, if you don't sing, I will eat you up. Gu Mengmeng frowned and said, TSK, can you be more creative? Using the same trick to threaten people will lose its effectiveness. Snake narrowed his eyes and slowly opened his mouth, revealing his poisonous fangs dripping with venom. He slowly approached Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng was terrified and said, mighty king, calm down. I will sing all right. Snake regained his cool in a second and looked at Gu Mengmeng with a, please start your performance expression. Gu Mengmeng tugged at her wrist and said, great king, can you loosen your grip first? Snake shook his head and said, just sing like this. All right. Gu Mengmeng cleared her throat and sang the Chinese version of Little Apple, interspersing the English lyrics in between. Actually, she was a little embarrassed to sing this song, especially when she felt like dancing along as she sang, as if she was possessed. Gu Mingming's eyes lit up. That night, Snakel gave Gu Mengmeng special permission to sleep late. He watched her dance, Little Apple, for half the night with a smile in his eyes, until she was so tired that she laid on the ground and refused to get up. Only then did he wrap her up in a beast skin, before stretching his arms out to sleep at a distance of 2 arms away from her. His body was too cold, even his blood was cold. He wanted to get closer to her, but he knew that no matter how warm she was, she could not warm up his ice-cold soul that had been frozen for 1,000 years. Instead of causing her to fall sick again, why not let her maintain her own warmth, while he just watched from afar? Anyway, he was already used to the cold. The next morning, Gu Mengmeng was woken up by a loud clamor. Snake, get out here right now. I want to challenge you. Chapter 548. Snake tugged at Gu Mingming's hand that was rubbing her eyes and leaned forward. He stuck out his tongue and licked it lightly. Gu Mengmeng shuddered and instantly lost all her sleepiness. She moved back and said, Don't, you make me feel like you are a pervert. Snake was not angry and just said, in my memory, the father beast would treat the mother beast like this every morning, and the mother beast would reveal a rare smile. Gu Meng Meng was stunned and asked, "Did your father do this before or after your mother woke up?" Snake shook his head, indicating that he could not remember clearly. Gu Meng Meng explained patiently, "If he kisses your mother's eyes before she wakes up, that is a gentle wake-up call. But if he licks her eyes after she wakes up, that is a pervert, understand?" Snake frowned and looked at Gu Meng Meng in confusion. Gu Meng Meng cupped Snake's face and said, "Close your eyes." Snake did as he was told and closed his eyes. Gu Meng Meng's lips landed lightly on Snake's eyes. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, she left swiftly. Then, she said gently, "Darling, wake up." Snake's heart skipped a beat. He opened his eyes and saw Gu Meng Meng's gentle smiling face right in front of him. He felt a little dazed. She clearly could not have known the scene at that time, but Snake had a feeling that Gu Meng Meng's version was the correct way his parents interacted. He could not say a word and could only stare at Gu Meng Meng in a daze. Gu Meng Meng chuckled and backed away. She said, "Hey, this is the correct way to wake up a husband and wife. Eating eye wax or something, that is too unconventional." Snake nodded and did not say a word. He only felt his throat tightening and something in his chest could not be controlled. Irritated, this feeling was irritated, right? He really wanted to grind something to vent the energy that was rampaging around in his body. What should he grind? Gu Meng Meng was not a good choice. She was too weak and could not be pieced back together if he did not control it well. "Snake, don't think that I don't know you are inside. If you don't come out, I will go in." The clamor at the door continued. Snake's eyes widened and his lips curled into an evil smile. "Oh, just grind him to pieces." Gu Meng Meng's hand was still held in Snake's palm, so she could only passively follow him as he walked out. The moment she exited the cave, the sunlight was a little blinding. Gu Meng Meng squinted her eyes and reached out to block the sunlight. Snake noticed her discomfort and quickly carried her up, using his chest to provide her with some shade. He supported her little but with one hand and caressed the back of her head with the other, hugging Gu Meng Meng like a child. He looked at the other snake beast standing at the entrance of the cave with the attitude of a father bringing his daughter to the amusement park and being robbed by bullies. He frowned and said impatiently, "You're so noisy." "Wait." The snake beast widened its eyes and pointed at Gu Meng Meng in Snake's arms as if he had seen a ghost. "Who is she? Tell me, what's going on between the two of you?" Chapter 549. While Gu Meng Meng was sizing up the snake beast was also sizing her up. It was just that she could not see anything else from that horrified expression. But why did Gu Meng Meng feel that this situation was a little familiar? She remembered. When she had just arrived at Saint Nazaire, Nina seemed to be looking for trouble with her in the same manner. But this snake beast in front of her was obviously a male. Was it right to act like the first wife beating up the third wife? Gu Meng Meng looked at the snake beast with a confused expression, then at Snake. She hesitated and hesitated, but still opened her mouth to ask, "Are you two good gay friends?" The snake beast did not know what good gay friends were, but Snake knew. His face instantly darkened as he gritted his teeth and said, "No." The snake beast took a step forward and roared in an unconvinced manner, "I am Wabi, the one who will defeat Snake and become the new Snake King. We are enemies, not friends." Gu Meng Meng felt the thick aura of a Chinibu and laughed dryly. "Sir, how old are you?" Wabi raised his upper body and looked at Gu Meng Meng with an insufferably arrogant look. "What do you mean?" Gu Meng Meng was just about to explain when Snake placed Gu Meng Meng on a rock at the side. The rock was warm from the sun and it was quite comfortable. The colorful snakes immediately surrounded her and marked out a safe zone, just like the circle that Sun Wukong drew for Trippiaka every time he went to pray, but the area was bigger. But with Gu Mingming's fear of snakes, she did not dare to move even if the area was bigger. Who knew which snake would suddenly think that she was going to escape and bite her? Don't move, wait for me, very soon. Snake placed Gu Mingming's hand by his lips and mimicked her kissing his eyes, kissing the back of her hand, darling. Gu Mengmeng wanted to explain that what she did just now was just recreating the scene and putting herself in his shoes to tell him that kissing his eyes was the correct way to say good morning. Darling was not a casual way to say, did he think he was Taobao's customer service? You call everyone dear. Snake did not give Gu Mengmeng a chance to explain. He turned around and transformed into a giant snake. His posture was similar to Wabiai, with a human body and a snake tail. However, when the two of them stood side by side, it was obvious that they were taller. Snake's entire body was green and the color was much darker than usual. The oppressive feeling was also stronger. Even Gu Mengmeng, who could not feel the beast pressure, felt suffocated. She stopped breathing and did not even dare to breathe loudly. She was extremely nervous. On the other hand, Wabiai shook his tail, looking eager to try. His smile was a little creepy. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like a pervert. Snake did not want to be entangled with Wabiai and swung his snake tail directly at his abdomen. The scales on his tail were in an exploding state, and if he were to be swept by this attack, he would probably end up with his flesh torn apart. Although Wabiai's body was big, he was not clumsy. On the contrary, he was especially agile. When he saw Snake swinging his tail at him, he crouched down and stuck close to the ground to avoid Snake's attack. At the same time, he charged towards Snake like an arrow leaving the bow, as if intending to engage in close combat. Snake laughed coldly and stood still on the spot, allowing Wabiai to attack him. When Wabiai's poisonous fangs almost touched his abdomen, Snake suddenly transformed into a snake, opened his mouth wide and bit down on Wabiai's weak spot. He raised his body and flung Wabiai into a thick noodle, a noodle without a soul. Aside from the topic, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I hope every baby has someone to accompany them. I hope you will have someone to care for you when you are sad, someone to rely on when you are tired, and someone to share your happiness with. Chapter 550. Snake had no intention of letting Wabiai off. His thick snake body coiled around Wabiai tightly, strangling him inch by inch. The two of them, whom Gu Mengmeng had mistaken as a gay couple just a moment ago, twisted into a matcha *T fried dough twist. The scene was too gory and Gu Mengmeng did not dare to watch. She hugged her knees and buried her face in them. Snakes were indeed too scary. Not long after, a pair of cold hands lightly tapped Gu Mengmeng's arm and a cold voice rang above her head, "Tu Meng." Gu Mengmeng looked up and the first thing she saw was a hand with its palm facing upwards, followed by Snake's devilish face. Gu Mengmeng hesitated for a moment and raised her tiny fist in mid-air, not daring to place it in Snake's hand. Snake raised his brows and said unhappily, Gu Mengmeng pouted and said, "Did you wash your hands after grabbing *T just now?" Snake was taken aback. He turned back to look at the bloody Wabiai and suddenly searched his memory for a scene related to *T. Other animals *T seemed different from snakes. Snake felt as if he had suffered an internal injury. He felt that he might never be willing to accept Wabiai's challenge again. Slowly retracting his hand, Snake sighed and said, "Let's go." Gu Mengmeng did not move. She hugged her knees and sat on the spot. She looked at Snake and asked, "Where to?" Snake looked at his own hands silently and said, "To wash my hands." Gu Mengmeng laughed unkindly, but still stood up and followed behind Snake. When she passed by Wabiai who was lying on the ground, Gu Mengmeng asked, "What about him?" Snake stopped and turned back to ask, "Do you want to eat *T? Do you want to eat snakes?" Gu Mengmeng was so scared that her face turned pale. She ran to Snake's side and said, "No, no, no, I'm not interested at all. Let's go and wash our hands." Snake frowned as he looked at Gu Meng Meng avoiding snakes. He said quietly, "Actually, snake meat is quite delicious." Gu Meng Meng was stunned. She turned to look at Snake with a stiff neck and said, "Why do males like to persuade others to eat themselves?" Snake looked back at Gu Meng Meng and said, "Eat myself." Gu Meng Meng did not say anything. She just looked at Snake quietly, as if waiting for an answer. Snake shook his head and said, "There's nothing else in the Snake King Valley, but there are plenty of snakes. It won't be too late to eat me after you finish eating them." Gu Mingming's gaze landed on Wabiai, who was standing behind Snake. She twitched her mouth and shook her head, turning to run. "No, no, I can't bring myself to do it." Snake also turned back to look at Wabiai and nodded. "Yeah, it is a little disgusting." The two of them chatted as they walked to the lakeside. Gu Meng Meng squatted down and scooped up a handful of water to wash her face. Then, she retreated to a spot further away from the shore. Snake, on the other hand, was relaxed. He swam his entire body into the lake, his snake tail swaying gently in the water. His upper body that was above the water maintained his human form. He asked, "You're afraid of water?" Gu Meng Meng shook her head. "I am a little white dragon in the waves. Only Sun Yang can swim faster than me." Snake did not know Sun Yang and was not interested. He only asked, "Then why didn't you enter the water?" Gu Meng Meng picked up a stone and threw it into the water. She smiled faintly and answered, "Someone's heart would beat erratically the moment he saw me near the lake. He was so nervous that he would be abandoned. So I promised him not to go near the lake." Aside from the topic, Happy Valentine's Day. Chapter 551. Snake swam to Gu Mingming's side and laid his upper body on the shore. He looked at her and asked, "Why?" Gu Mengmeng did not want to tell him about how she tried to jump into the lake to transmigrate back to the modern world after she was heartbroken, but was mistaken as a suicide attempt. She just avoided the topic and said, "I transmigrated from the lake, so he was afraid that I would be pulled back once I got close to the lake." Snake sneered and reached out his long arm to grab Gu Mingming's ankle. Gu Mengmeng swayed a few times in a panic and finally fell into Snake's slightly cold arms. With a plop, Snake carried Gu Mengmeng and fell back into the lake. Gu Mingming's swimming ability was not bad and she managed to maintain her balance after a few flops. She glared at Snake and asked, "What are you doing?" Snake used his snake tail to lift Gu Mengmeng up gently. His ice-cold fingers brushed past Gu Mingming's face and tidied her wet hair. He said, "Tell that certain someone to stop worrying. Even if you drown yourself in the lake, you won't be able to transmigrate back." Gu Mengmeng was stunned for a moment. She suddenly grabbed onto Snake's shoulders excitedly and asked, "You know how to transmigrate back?" Snake's expression darkened. His jade-green eyes reflected the ripples in the water. He opened his thin lips and said slowly, "Yeah, I know. Should I tell you?" Gu Mengmeng was suddenly stunned. "Want to know?" "Want to?" She had panicked when she first came to the beast world. She was frightened by these monsters who could turn from beasts into humans and run around naked. She had also complained about the lack of resources and entertainment, but other than the time she escaped after she was heartbroken, she had never thought of going back. Compared to the modern world, this place was more like her home. All the people she loved, the people who loved her, were here. Did she want to go back? What should she do after returning? Continue my unfinished university studies and struggle with one part-time job after another for the rest of my life? She had to admit that life in the beast world was too comfortable for her. Elvis and Leah gave her the best care. She had not lived such a peaceful and happy life since she was 7 years old. Gu Mengmeng slowly took a few steps back and looked at Snake with a confused gaze. but she still shook her head in the end. I don't want to know. I don't want to go back. I promised them that I wouldn't leave them behind. Snake seemed to be rather surprised. He stared at Gu Meng Meng with a rather stiff expression. Only when Gu Meng Meng had already swam ashore did he chase after her from behind. He did not transform back to his human form, but caught up with Gu Meng Meng in his half-orc form. He carried her in his arms and swam back to the cave. When they came back, a fire was already lit in the cave. There was a pot on the fire with stewed meat in it. He didn't need to taste it to know that it was Li's doing just by smelling it. Gu Meng Meng sat in front of the fire, hugging her knees. Her mind was in a daze and she could not tell what she was thinking. Snake's face would always linger in her mind. Yes, I know. Should I tell you? He had clearly rejected her, but he couldn't help but think about it. Gu Meng Meng sneaked a glance at Snake, and Snake's gaze coincidentally landed on Gu Meng Meng's face. He used his hand to gently rub Gu Meng Meng's face and said, "Didn't you like the food he cooked? Why don't you eat?" Chapter 552. There was clearly nothing worth staying in that world, but deciding not to go back and forgetting to go back were two different things. Gu Meng Meng did not know what she could not bear to part with. She just felt that it was difficult to breathe and something was about to spill out of her eyes uncontrollably. Snake frowned and cupped her little face, asking, "Why are you crying all of a sudden? Is the food too disgusting?" Gu Meng Meng shook her head and pursed her lips to suppress her emotions. She said in a nasal voice, "I want to see my hubby, let me see him. I really need him now, really need him." Snake's face was as cold as ice and there was a dangerous factor swirling in his eyes. He caressed Gu Meng Meng's face with one hand and circled the back of her head with the other. He pressed down on her neck lightly and pushed her into his arms. His voice was filled with suppressed anger, calm but dangerous. "What do you need? I will satisfy you." Gu Meng Meng shook her head and sobbed, "I want my hubby. I want my hubby." Snake's brows were tightly knitted together and his voice became much colder. "All right, then I will be your hubby." Gu Meng Meng pushed Snake away and resisted his hug. Like a mischievous child, she shouted with tears and snot all over her face, "I don't want you, I want my hubby, let me see my hubby." Sob sob. "I want my hubby." Snake gritted his teeth. The irritated feeling made him want to bite this troublemaking girl to death. But his poisonous fangs seemed to be stuck to his mouth and he could not say a word. Taking a deep breath, Snake let go of Gu Meng Meng. He did not say anything and just turned to leave the cave. Gu Meng Meng wanted to follow him out too. She wanted to find Elvis and Leah. But the cave entrance was completely blocked by colorful snakes. Unless Gu Meng Meng wriggled through the snakes, there was no way she could leave the cave. Gu Meng Meng felt extremely wronged and sat on the ground, crying loudly. She cried until she was exhausted. Then, she lay on the ground and fell asleep. When Elvis arrived, he saw Gu Meng Meng sobbing as she slept on the ground. She always had a way to make his heart ache. Elvis frowned and took 2 steps forward to hug Gu Meng Meng. The familiar smell and warmth made Gu Meng Meng feel at ease, but her eyes were too swollen and she was really too tired from crying just now, so Gu Meng Meng could only find a comfortable angle in Elvis's arms and continue sleeping. When she woke up, it was already past midnight. Besides Elvis, Leo was also called over. The 2 males were in their original forms, protecting Gu Meng Meng in the middle, one on the left and one on the right. The moment she opened her eyes, she had an illusion that she was still in the cave at Saint Nazaire. "You cried and called the 2 of them over just to sleep with you." The cold voice pulled Gu Meng Meng back to reality. She looked up at Snake who was standing on top of her head and grabbed onto Elvis like a startled bird. She shrunk into his arms with all her might, wishing she could just bury herself in his chest. Elvis had no choice but to transform into his human form and pull her into his arms. He patted her back gently and comforted her. It's all right, it's all right. Xiao Meng, don't be scared, I'm here. Gu Mengmeng nodded her head obediently. She only used her nose to reply with a before she felt like crying again. Chapter 553. Burp. Gu Mengmeng was so frightened that she burped, but she forced herself to hold back her tears. Elvis was helpless. He himself could not defeat Snake, and in addition, he was poisoned by him, so he could not muster up any strength. It was already very difficult for him to carry Gu Mengmeng. He wanted to put on the airs of a man to protect his wife, but he could not. He could only pat Gu Mengmeng's back lightly to calm her emotions, then looked at her with guilt and heartache, asking, "You are crying, just to make my heart ache." Gu Mengmeng shook her head, then pounced into Elvis's arms, hugging him tightly. After calming her emotions, she said, "Snake said, he knows the way to let me go back." The moment Gu Mengmeng finished her sentence, she could clearly feel the arm hugging her tightened instinctively. Gu Mengmeng looked up, meeting Elvis's shocked, stunned, panicked and helpless blue eyes. She smiled sweetly, saying, "But, I didn't listen. I said, I don't want to go back, hubby, am I right?" Elvis felt as if a breath was stuck in his throat, and after hearing the second half of Gu Mengmeng's sentence, he exhaled with a smile. He hugged Gu Mengmeng tightly in his arms, one hand protecting her waist, the other supporting the back of her head, kissing her deeply on the lips. At that moment, no words could express his feelings. He did not know whether to say that it was good to have a new lease on life, or to say that he was lucky for 3 lifetimes. He only knew that he had never hated himself, a mere 5th-level orc, so weak in front of Snake. If not, the first thing he would have done was to kill Snake, so that the method to transmigrate back would remain a secret forever. Leah also transformed into a half-orc, his large furry tail gently protecting Gu Mengmeng's back. When Elvis finally let go of her, Leah then said, "This is a good thing, why are you crying?" Gu Mengmeng turned to look at Leah, her eyes were like the washed night sky, so innocent that it made one's heart ache. "I don't know, I just feel that I can never go back, it's very sad." Leah sighed, asking, "Can't bear to part with your swimsuit, Prince Charming?" Gu Mengmeng was stunned, her homesickness dissipating by half. She shook her head awkwardly, blaming Leah for ruining the atmosphere. Leah asked, "Then you can't bear to leave Eugene?" Crack, the atmosphere was completely destroyed by Leah. Gu Mengmeng grabbed a small stone and threw it at Leah, saying, "How many times have I told you, Eugene is a fictional character, there is no such person, no no no." Leah rubbed Gu Mengmeng's little head and said, all right, if you say no then no. It's just that if he comes knocking one day, tsk, Elvis, and I will not return you to him." Gu Mengmeng was going crazy. She punched Leah a few times in the air and said, "I told you there's no such person." Leah smiled warmly and stared at Gu Mengmeng, nodding his head with a yeah, continue making up stories expression. Gu Mengmeng snorted before turning around and burrowing back into Elvis's arms. She knew that Leah was using his method to calm her down. And this method was obviously effective. She didn't want to cry anymore, and she felt that the way she had cried just now was so funny. Chapter 554. Elvis stroked Gu Mengmeng's little head, then smiled gently and said, "Your decision saved my life." "Thank you, my queen." Gu Mengmeng's face turned red. Gu Mengmeng sniffled and leaned into Elvis's arms. She closed her eyes in bliss. Snake walked forward and picked Gu Mengmeng up from Elvis's arms, then said, "All right, you two can leave now." Gu Mengmeng kicked her legs. "I don't want to. I want to be with my hubby." Snake pulled Gu Mengmeng in front of him and stared at her with his vertical pupils. He said coldly, "Are you challenging my patience?" Gu Meng Meng looked at Snake coldly. Gu Meng Meng wilted. She lost her confidence. At first, she was so flustered that she forgot about how scary Snake was when she was fooling around. But now that she had calmed down, she could no longer throw a tantrum without any restraint. Elvis and Leah didn't want to make things difficult for Gu Meng Meng, so they could only walk to her side and kiss her little hand. Xiao Meng, protect yourself well. That's the most important thing, do you understand? Snake stared at Gu Meng Meng's kissed hand in disgust. He pulled it back and simply hugged Gu Meng Meng. He glared at Elvis and Leah with a darkened face. I'll eat you if you don't leave now. The two of them felt helpless. They had never been so cowardly since they established Saint Nazir. But he was the Beast King. After Elvis and Leah left, Gu Meng Meng did not say a word. She just lay by the fire quietly with her back facing Snake. Snake had used 1,000 years to get used to loneliness. But Gu Meng Meng only used 2 to 3 days to get used to the noise. In the cave, Gu Meng Meng suddenly stopped talking, which made Snake feel that something was wrong. He sat behind Gu Meng Meng. He looked at the back of her head carefully. Clearing his throat, he asked, "Do you want me to bring you out to pluck some fruits?" Gu Meng Meng replied, "No. You kick the tree every time you disagree. You're going to wipe out the rare species sooner or later." Snake said. Then, Gu Meng Meng said, "I don't want to talk." Snake was silent for a moment. He felt a little lost. He was used to her being by his side. He had even forgotten how he had survived for the past 1,000 years. But he didn't have anything that could make her happy. As far as he knew, the only thing that could make her happy were those two males. Gu Meng Meng also felt the stifling atmosphere in the cave, but she was not in a good mood and did not want to bother about it. She simply covered her head with the beast skin and continued sleeping. The next morning, when Gu Meng Meng woke up, she realized that Snake was sitting right in front of her, staring at her with a "I'm not in a good mood, come and show me some" concerned expression. After a night's sleep, Gu Meng Meng's emotions had completely calmed down. She sat cross-legged and looked at Snake, asking, "Are you still angry?" Snake shook his head and said, "Why don't you want to go back?" Gu Meng Meng was taken aback. After a moment of silence, she lowered her head and smiled bitterly. "Because in that world, there is no one waiting for me to return." Snake was silent for a moment, then he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Back then, she tried her best to go back. In order to gather all the divine weapons needed for transmigration, she was unscrupulous and unscrupulous. In the end, he failed on the verge of success." Chapter 555. Gu Meng Meng pursed her lips and inched closer. She hesitated for a moment before grabbing onto Snake's hand and said, "Maybe, there is someone in that world that she could not bear to part with." Snake chuckled and looked at Gu Meng Meng's little hand, saying, "This is the first time you have taken the initiative to hold my hand." Gu Meng Meng did not say anything and did not retract her hand. She just looked at Snake quietly because she knew that Snake had something to say. Snake used 2 breaths to adjust his emotions before saying, "The last divine weapon she needs is me." Gu Meng Meng was stunned and frowned slightly. Snake used his finger to gently smooth Gu Meng Meng's brows and said, "You are already ugly enough, if you make wrinkles, you will be even uglier." Gu Meng Meng chuckled and said, "Yeah, you are the expert in skin care, I will listen to you." Both of Snake's hands landed on Gu Meng Meng's in the end. He held on to her small fists as if they were a source of energy for him. He slowly started to recall the past that had been washed away by time and could no longer evoke any emotions. He said, "The key to activating the gate of transmigration is a blood relative of the Beast King level." No one knows what kind of agreement she made with the beast deity. Anyway, after she suddenly woke up, she ran to a cave and found my beast father who had just woken up from his hibernation. She proposed to mate with him. Then, there was me. Gu Meng Meng was a little dramatic. She suddenly thought of the scene in Legend of Mi Yu, where Sun Li held her stomach and said to the courtiers, "The late king sent me a dream and we had sex in the dream. In the end, when I woke up, I was pregnant." Ha ha ha. Snake did not know what Gu Meng Meng was thinking and continued, "Her other partners all loved her, were afraid of her and indulged her. But my father was different. Maybe it was the nature of a snake. His love was possessive and selfish. There was no such thing as sacrifice and fulfillment in a snake's dictionary. When he found out that she had mated with him just to give birth to a beast king's blood relative to open the door of transmigration and abandon him, he was furious. Hence, he threw me into a cold pond. I slept at the bottom of the pond for many years and did not know what happened after that. But when I woke up and broke out of my shell, there was no longer a messenger of the beast deity in this world. As for the memories I inherited, they only lasted until the moment when my father sank me to the bottom of the cold pond." Gu Meng Meng patted Snake's shoulder lightly. "At least you survived. That's good enough." Snake sneered, his gaze filled with a tinge of helplessness as he asked, "Do you really think that living and not dying is a good thing?" Gu Meng Meng could not answer this question. She remembered reading a sentence in a book, "1,000 years of life gives birth to 1,000 years of loneliness." The beginning of his life was a scheme and exploitation. He was even more unfortunate than himself. At least, before her father cheated on her, Gu Meng Meng had enjoyed a few years of parental love. Snake looked up, as if he had thought of something interesting. He asked, "Is there a beast king among your sons?" Gu Meng Meng's face froze. "No." Chapter 556. Gu Meng Meng's smile froze on her face for a moment. Indeed, ever since she came to the beast world, there seemed to be people confessing to her, expressing their goodwill and requesting to mate with her. Indeed, she could always see fanaticism, stubbornness, adoration and possessiveness in the eyes of various males. But Snake was a special case. His eyes were dark but clear, not the kind of clarity that came from someone who did not understand anything, but the kind of clarity that came from someone who had gone through many vicissitudes of life. Gu Meng Meng asked herself, even if she had started practicing 10,086 ways to seduce a snake demon, since she was in her mother's womb, with her less than 20 years of skills, she would not be able to play strange stories from a Chinese studio in front of a 1,000-year-old demon like Snake. Snake's special interest in her should be due to his curiosity towards her mother. If it was her, she would also want to know what was so good about that world that her mother was so obsessed with going back. She did not hesitate to abandon so many partners who had placed their lives in her hands, and even wanted to use her own bloodline as the key to open the door to transmigration. And this curiosity was not equivalent to adoration. Snake's hostility towards Elvis and the rest and his obvious possessiveness towards her were probably due to his snake nature. Selfish, greedy, that's all. Looking at it from another perspective, if one day you adopted a stray dog, and this dog was rather cute, foolishly wandering around in front of you every day, comforting your lonely soul and boring life. Then one day, the original owner of the dog came looking for you, saying, "This dog belongs to me, return it." If it was you, you would also feel uncomfortable, right? Of course, modern people have the most basic upbringing and etiquette, so if the original owner could provide sufficient evidence to prove that the dog really belonged to him, no matter how unwilling he was, he would still return it to him. At most, he would just discuss, "Add me on WeChat. Let me visit this idiot when it's convenient." But Snake was different. Just like what Elvis had said, in the beast world, taking by force was the right thing to do. Back then, Elvis broke off the beast horn that Oriton used to share food and snatched it for Gu Meng Meng to play with. Not only did Elvis not feel that there was a problem, Oriton also looked as though it was only natural for him to be snatched. "I can't beat you, so I deserve to be snatched by you." This was the accepted theory in the beast world. Even now, the logic was still the same. If Gu Meng Meng was a stray dog, Snake would have picked her up or snatched her. The original dog owner Elvis could not defeat Snake, so he could only watch helplessly as this dog recognized the snake as his master. Moreover, he even asked, "Snake King, can I add you on WeChat?" He could not do it, because the person who transmigrated was Gu Meng Meng, not Ma Huatang. This analogy made Gu Mingming's face twitch. She despised the act of comparing herself to a stray dog. It must be because Snake, this demon, kept putting his palm up and calling her Tu Meng to train her to shake hands had affected her perception. Gu Meng Meng twitched her lips before replying to Snake with a look of disdain. Scram. Snakel just quietly watched as the expression on Gu Mingming's little face changed a few times after he raised the mating request. The conclusion she came up with was actually, get lost. Chapter 557. Gu Meng Meng put on a perfunctory smile and heaved a sigh of relief, saying, "Thank you so much for being so considerate for me." Snake turned his hand slightly and held on to Gu Mingming's wrist. His upper body leaned forward and his other hand easily grabbed onto Gu Mingming's other wrist. Both his hands were placed on both sides of Gu Mingming's body, restraining both of her hands, not giving her a chance to escape. His entire body shrouded Gu Meng Meng with a strong sense of oppression. His pair of dark green eyes carried a depth that Gu Meng Meng could not understand. There was a kind of temptation that spread through the dangerous scent, like an invisible hand, firmly grabbing onto Gu Meng Meng. "Let's work together and give birth to a child with the bloodline of a beast king to open the gate of transmigration. Then, bring me along to your original world, all right?" Gu Mingming's body could not move as if her acupoints had been sealed. Even though Snake's pressure made it hard for her to breathe, she could not even move backwards to avoid him. She could only bite the bullet and look into Snake's eyes. She shook her head with difficulty and said, "I promised Elvis and Leah that I will not abandon them. I will not leave them." Snake squinted his eyes and said thoughtfully, "I heard that in your world, there is something called law. A female can only mate with one male, or else she will be captured and locked up." Gu Meng Meng nodded instinctively and responded with a single word, "Yeah." Snake's face slowly inched closer to Gu Meng Meng and he gave an extremely evil smile, saying, "Since you can only have one partner, why not choose the strongest one? I will accompany you to transmigrate back and become your only legal partner. With my abilities, I will be the king no matter which world I am in. That way, no one will ever bully you, isn't that good?" Gu Meng Meng did not avoid Snake's eyes and just looked at him quietly. After a long while, she slowly opened her mouth and said, "You just want to see with your own eyes what the world that your mother could not bear to part with looks like, right?" Snake's lips curled up into a vague smile, but he did not know why. Tilting his head, he said, "If I say yes, will you satisfy me?" Gu Meng Meng shook her head and said, "I will not use my own children as the price to open that door of transmigration." Snakel sneered and returned to his original position. His right hand was still holding on to Gu Mingming's wrist, but his gaze was looking into the distance. He said, "She is calmer than you, more rational than you and more heartless than you. No wonder my father fell in love with her that year. She is indeed the most suitable female for the snake race." Snake turned his head and looked at Gu Meng Meng with disdain. He smiled. "Even though you are from the same world, you and her are so different." Gu Meng Meng shrugged her shoulders and said, "I'm really sorry for not meeting your family standards for marriage." Snake pinched Gu Mingming's little face and said, "Family means nothing to me." Gu Mingming's heart skipped a beat. She still could not learn to think before speaking and would always say something that would hurt others unintentionally. Apologizing would only make the atmosphere more awkward. Gu Meng Meng patted her butt and stood up. She turned back to look at Snake, who was still holding her hand and sitting at the same spot. She said, "I'm hungry, accompany me to pluck some fruits." Chapter 558. There was someone sitting outside the cave. Gu Mengmeng glanced at him and felt that he looked familiar, but she could not recall who he was. Snake, on the other hand, completely ignored this person and walked past him without even glancing at him from the corner of his eyes. That person saw Snake and Gu Mengmeng coming out together, so he stood up and followed. Not only did Snake not slow down, he even walked faster and faster, obviously trying to shake off that person behind him. That person was neither angry nor anxious, he just followed until Snake stopped under a huge tree and looked up at the red fruits on the branches. He then stood beside Snake and looked up at the tree together with Snake. He stared at it for a long while in a daze, asking, "What are you looking at?" Snake ignored him and turned to ask Gu Mengmeng, "Do you want to eat this?" Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and nodded as she looked at the fruits that were giving off an alluring glow. Snake then turned back to look at the person behind him and said coldly, "Go up and pluck the fruits for me." That person was taken aback and frowned, "Don't you have hands?" Snake supported Gu Mengmeng's but with one hand and protected her waist with the other. He shook Gu Mengmeng and said righteously, "I have hands, but I'm busy, so you go." Gu Mengmeng nodded. That person seemed to be caught off guard and was stuffed with a mouthful of dog food. After holding it in for a long while, he only said fiercely, "All right." He raised his leg and kicked that fruit tree. If there were no accidents, this fruit tree would let out a sad cry of being broken and then die. But there was an accident. Before his leg could reach the fruit tree, Snake raised his leg and sent him flying. The man clutched his chest and glared at Snake, asking, "What now?" Snake's face was cold and he said, "Tu Meng likes trees, don't kick them." The man pointed at Snake and clenched his teeth for a long time before finally squeezing out a sentence, "You." Snake was expressionless as he walked to the man and kicked him, saying, "Are you dead? If you're not dead, go and pick some fruits. Tu Meng is hungry." The man was extremely aggrieved but he had no other choice. He could only walk to the side of the tree and transform into a half-orc. Just as he was about to swim up the tree, Snake stepped on his tail forcefully and the man cried out in pain. He turned around and glared at Snake. "What now?" Snake's face was still cold as he said, "Tu Meng hates sh*t, snakes and snakes that look like sh*t. Your original form is all three. Maintain your human form and climb up. Don't show any postures that will disgust Tu Meng, or it will affect her appetite." The man was so angry that his face turned green. He pointed at Snake, then at Gu Mengmeng, before pointing at Snake again. "I am not doing this anymore. If your female wants to eat the fruit, you can climb up and pluck it yourself." Snake curled his lips and said, "It's rare for you to say something pleasant. Seeing that you're so good at talking, I've decided to help you." "Ha!" The man did not react in time and did not know that his unintentional, "You're female," had pleased Snake. He only felt a pain in his buttocks and then he flew up. Yes, he flew up. Snake used a perfect arc to kick the man onto the tree. Looking at the man who was hanging on the tree branch like a rag doll and shouting at him, Snake revealed a "You're welcome" smile and said, "Hurry and pluck the fruit. If you spoil Tu Meng, I'll kill you." Snake's eyes lit up. Aside from the topic, on Valentine's Day, Snake and Gu Mengmeng tortured Wabi. This was still just a coincidence. The script had been saved a long time ago and the daily update 9000 just happened to be here. All coincidences were probably fate. Besides, there was no more update today. My babies don't have to wait anymore. It's Valentine's Day. Go out and have a date. Don't be distracted by reading novels. Tomorrow, I'll still be here waiting for you. Chapter 559. The man on the tree was infuriated. He plucked off a fruit and threw it at Snake. Snake caught it steadily and frowned. I want the biggest one at the top. The man waved his arms and legs in a comical manner. He looked like a character in a manga who was being abused. Gu Mengmeng pitied the innocent man. She held the fruit that was almost as big as her face with both hands. You don't have to go through so much trouble. This is good enough. Snake turned to look at Gu Mengmeng. He asked gently, do you like it? Gu Mengmeng nodded. She answered sweetly, yeah. Snake smiled in satisfaction. Then, he carried Gu Mengmeng and turned to leave. Before he left, he glared coldly at the man on the tree. If any of my fruit trees are damaged, I will throw you out of the Snake King Valley. Snake walked very quickly. Gu Mengmeng could no longer hear what the man on the tree was shouting. Is it all right to leave him here like that? That man had transformed just now. Although it was only for a short while, Gu Mengmeng could still recognize that he was Wabi, the one who had challenged Snake to a duel the day before and ended up being tortured. He looked like he was seriously injured and looked like he was about to turn into snake soup. And now, he was hanging on a tree. Snake frowned. Worried? Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips. I just saw that you two seem to be on good terms. Aren't you afraid that he will be angry and ignore you after you treat him like this? Snake laughed coldly. He rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head. With you by my side in the future, he is not important anymore. Gu Mengmeng was speechless. She felt like a new pet had replaced the old pet and received the owner's love. Then, when would there be a new pet to replace her, Tu Meng? How long have you known each other? Gu Mengmeng estimated the time she needed to be in charge. Snake stopped in his tracks. He seemed to be seriously recalling. After thinking for a long time, he said, I forgot. Wouldn't that be a matter of 1 or 2 years? Gu Mengmeng face-bombed. After all, he was once important to you. Shouldn't you remember our past relationship? I think that pile of **T looks quite fun. At least it can take more hits than me. It is at least a Nokia level. Do you want to consider? Snake's face was cold and his green eyes were filled with anger. He said, you want him. Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said, no, I hate shit, snakes and snakes that look like shit. You know that. Snake nodded and kept his unhappy expression. If you want to play, then play me. I can take a beating too, so I should be more interesting than him. With that, he hooked Gu Mengmeng's chin lightly and brought her face closer to his. Moreover, don't you think that my face is much prettier than his? Gu Mengmeng nodded her head and flattered him, beautiful, you are the most beautiful snake in the world. The corners of Snake's lips curled up and his eyes curved. He asked, compared to the wolf on your collarbone, who is prettier? Gu Mengmeng shut her mouth, she did not want to speak. If he told the truth, this fellow's rage would definitely soar, but if he told a lie, he would be unwilling. Chapter 560. Gu Mengmeng felt a chill down her spine and shook off the goosebumps on her body. Don't be so hardcore, we can still be friends. Snake's expression was calm and he did not comment. It was just eating a wolf, hardcore. Didn't he usually eat four-legged animals like this? Was there a difference? Snake's palm was huge and cold. When his fingertips touched Gu Mengmeng's smooth face, there was a strange feeling. It was as if an electric current was spreading from his fingertips to her heart. Every touch was a numbing sensation. Gu Mengmeng's face was as white as snow. It was very strange, but not annoying. Under his palm, her face looked very small. He caressed her face and felt the softness under his fingertips. It was so soft that it could make one's heart flutter. Gu Mengmeng brushed Snake's hand away. It's weird for you to look at me like this. You look like a wretched middle-aged uncle. Oh, no, you look like a wretched 1,000-year-old demon. Snake laughed out loud. He grabbed Gu Mingming's hand and placed it on his face. Have you ever seen such a good-looking 1,000-year-old demon? Gu Mengmeng shook her head. It's my first time seeing a 1,000-year-old living creature. There's no comparison. Snake tapped Gu Mingming's little head. Treasure it. You probably won't be able to find another 2,000-year-old demon in this world. Snake carried Gu Mengmeng to the waterfall. This was the place where Gu Mengmeng had her stomach pumped when she was poisoned by his violence. Snake placed Gu Mengmeng down and took the red fruit from her hands. He washed it in the water beside the waterfall before passing it to Gu Mengmeng. Eat. Gu Mengmeng did not stand on ceremony. She took the fruit and started munching on it. Snake looked at her eating with a gentle gaze. He always felt that it was strange. Why did the food in her hands always look so delicious? He had eaten the fruit on that tree before. Although he could not remember how long ago it was, he definitely had eaten it before. Because in those long and boring years, he had tried to eat some strange things to poison himself to end his boring life. Unfortunately, there was nothing more poisonous than his own snake venom in this world. If he did not even have any impression of the taste, there should not be anything special about it. But, Snake stepped forward and bit the other half of the fruit that Gu Mengmeng was eating. Looking at her eyes that widened in shock, Snake smiled and bit off half of the fruit with a loud crunch. Then, he chewed on it carefully. Juicy and sweet. It was a little crispy, not as tasty as the animal bone. However, it was quite delicious. Why hadn't he noticed this before? Gu Mengmeng put down the fruit she was holding in a daze. She looked at the fruit that he had bitten off and complained, there were so many on that tree. If you wanted to eat, why didn't you ask that lump of sh*t to help you pluck one more? Snake laughed out of boredom and replied as a matter of fact, the one in your hand looks more delicious. The one in your mouth looks more delicious, but it's a pity that there's poison on my teeth. If you touch it, it might kill you. So I have no choice but to take a step back and eat the one in your hand. Gu Mengmeng twirled the fruit. The area where Snake had bitten had indeed turned black. Her face falling, Gu Mengmeng asked, "Can I still eat this fruit?" Chapter 561. Gu Mengmeng sighed. She had no other choice but to break the fruit in her hand into a few pieces and feed them to Snake one piece at a time. Snake ate with gusto and looked like he was in a good mood. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and asked tentatively, "Snake, mm." It was the first time Gu Mengmeng called his name on her own accord, and it was also the first time he felt that his name sounded so nice. Gu Mengmeng fiddled with her fingers and asked softly, "You promised to help me save my sons, but why haven't I seen them?" Snake's face turned cold and he looked sideways at Gu Mengmeng and asked, "Are you thinking of your wild men?" Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, "How many times do I have to say it? He is my son, my biological son, not a wild man." Snake was displeased and frowned, saying, "I have said before, other than me, all the males around you are wild men. If you retort again, I will eat them up." Gu Mengmeng was helpless and forced herself to hold back her explanation. She watched as Snake stubbornly labeled her sons as wild men, and said helplessly, "Then where are they? How are they now?" Snake's face was cold, but he could not stand the worry in Gu Mengmeng's eyes. He slowly said, "With me around, she will not dare to act rashly." "Don't worry." Gu Mengmeng asked, "Who?" Snake said, "Don't you know who kidnapped your sons?" Gu Mengmeng was silent for a moment. "Cole. Ellie." Snake thought for a moment and said, "Oh, so her name is Ellie." Gu Mengmeng said, "You don't even know her name and you dare to guarantee that she will listen to you and not hurt my sons." Snake smiled lightly and with the confidence and calmness of a person in a superior position, he said, "She is a snake beast and I am the Snake King. In this world, there is no snake that has the guts to disobey my orders. Obedience is their innate nature." Gu Mengmeng took 2 steps forward timidly and pulled Snake's arm, saying, "Then, ask her to return my sons to me." Snake snorted and said, "Do you really think your wild men will be safer by my side than by Ellie's?" Gu Mengmeng was stunned as she recalled the scene of Snake torturing Elvis. Elvis was a 5th-level orc after all, but he could not withstand a single blow from Snake. If that tail had landed on Heda and the rest, Gu Mengmeng did not doubt that the 4 buns would have been exposed on the spot. Snake rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head and said, "Not mentioning them in front of me is the best way for you to protect them. The next time I see you worrying about them, I'll eat them to get rid of any future troubles." Gu Mengmeng shook her head and waved her hands. No, I'm not worried at all." Snake raised his eyebrow and said, "Mengmeng too." Ha, ha ha. Gu Mengmeng grinned, her face full of helplessness. Snake turned his head and said plainly, "So ugly." Gu Mengmeng sighed helplessly and thought to herself, "Ugly, hurry up and return my son and husband to me. I promise to immediately leave the Snake King Valley in a mellow manner and never pollute your eyes again." Unfortunately, Gu Coward only dared to think about it in her heart. She did not have the guts to say it out loud. Snake stood there quietly for a long time, until Gu Mengmeng almost suspected that the person standing in front of her was a statue. Rubbing her eyes, Gu Mengmeng turned her head to stretch her neck. Chapter 562. Ha! Gu Mengmeng's mind went blank for a moment and she did not manage to catch Snake's words. Snake was impatient as he frowned and said coldly, "Why aren't you looking at me anymore?" Gu Mengmeng blinked her eyes and said, My neck is sore, so I changed my posture to move around." Snake said, "When you move your neck, your eyes should be looking at me." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback as she imagined herself focusing her gaze on a point and then turning her neck. Why did she look like a possessed turtle prime minister? Seeing Gu Mengmeng burst out laughing, Snake's slight awkwardness also dissipated. He turned to face Gu Mengmeng and asked, "What are you laughing at?" Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said, "Look." As she said that, she did what she imagined and then laughed out loud. Snake looked at the mischievous Gu Mengmeng with a layer of warmth and gentleness in his dark green and cold eyes. He said, "So ugly." Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, Right. It's too ugly, ha ha ha." Snake carried Gu Mengmeng back into his arms and said, "Even if it's ugly, you still have to look at me." Ha! Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. What kind of twisted obsession was this? Gu Mengmeng deliberately turned her head and said, "I have to look at the road when I walk and the bowl when I eat. How can I always look at you?" Snake raised his head and said, "I will carry you when we walk and feed you when we eat. Your eyes just have to look at me." Gu Mengmeng asked, "Why?" Snake said, "Just now, you were the one who stared at me first." Gu Mengmeng thought for a moment and said, "Yeah, of course I have to look at you when I talk to you." Snake said, "Then why did you stop looking at me halfway?" Gu Mengmeng. "What do you mean by halfway?" "My neck is getting sore from looking at you acting like a statue all the time," Snake said in a commanding tone. "Look at me, I will allow it. But you are not allowed to stop looking halfway." He had thought that she was so entranced because the back of his head was particularly attractive, so he maintained his posture and did not dare to move for her to see. But this girl actually stopped looking halfway. Aggrieved, too aggrieved. The Snake King could not take this lying down. Gu Mengmeng shook her head helplessly. Sometimes, it was really difficult to communicate with people who were too different in age, especially those who were thousands of years apart. That was simply a gulf, do you understand? Snake, stop right there and speak clearly. That pile of sh*t. Wabi finally came down from the tree and chased after them. She took 2 quick steps and stood in front of Snake, pointing at him. What did you say just now? If she falls asleep? What are you going to do to me? Snake was displeased and didn't like people disturbing his time with Gu Meng Meng. He ignored Wabi and just carried Gu Meng Meng away. Snake, 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 long, snake, 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 Meng Meng, snake. Come, let us have a good fight today and see who will be the one to throw who out of the Snake King Valley. Gu Meng Meng, gu snake gu, snake. Saying. Snake gu Meng Meng. Gu Meng Meng could not understand the situation and answered instinctively, I can't feel the beast pressure either. Snake seemed to be relieved. He pressed the back of Gu Meng Meng's head with his hand and placed her little face on his shoulder. He whispered into her ear, if you feel uncomfortable, you have to tell me. Gu Meng Meng nodded. Chapter 563. Gu Meng Meng could not help but moan softly. Then, the world became very quiet. Even the wind did not dare to blow the leaves. What's wrong? Snake lifted Gu Meng Meng's chin gently and scrutinized her slightly pale face. He frowned and felt a tightness in his chest. Looking at that pile of sh*t, he felt more and more irritated. He snapped, didn't you say you could not feel the beast pressure? Gu Meng Meng shook her head helplessly. Are you releasing your beast pressure? I thought you were going to destroy the earth. Snake was amused by Gu Meng Meng's words. He glanced at Wabi, who was paralyzed on the ground. He ignored him and walked away. Gu Meng Meng was a little worried. Snake stopped and looked at Gu Meng Meng seriously. Do you want to eat snakes? Gu Meng Meng shook her head. No. Snake felt a little regretful. He turned back to look at Wabi. The peak of 5th level. It should be very nourishing. Gu Meng Meng smiled embarrassedly. I am weak and have little luck. I can't handle such nourishment. Snake did not comment. He nodded and carried Gu Meng Meng back into the cave. The next few days could be considered to be peaceful. Wabi seemed to have been shaken quite badly that time. Hence, he did not appear at Snake's cave for a few days. The food that Leah made would be delivered to Snake's cave by the little snakes. Every day, there would be different kinds of food. Everything was very exquisite. Gu Meng Meng knew that Leah was using this method to tell her that he and Elvis were fine and there was no need to worry. But as for the little wolves, she wondered how they were doing now. Snake said that Ellie did not dare to go against the Snake King's words. This was the innate nature of their race. She did not know whether it was true or not. But she did not dare to pester him any further. She could only convince herself that Snake would not lie to her. About half a month passed. Gu Meng Meng thought that Snake would let her and Elvis leave with the little wolves once he was sick of it. But this fellow became more and more clingy. When she slept, he would sit beside her and watch. When she ate, he would sit beside her and watch. Even when she was defecating, he sat nearby and watched. Sometimes, when Gu Meng Meng was really bored, she would throw small stones at each other for fun. She would throw one out and use the other to hit the stone that was thrown out first. Regardless of whether she could hit it or not, she would chase after it to pick it up and throw it again. Snake was also watching this boring game from the side, and he was enjoying it very much. The one who broke Snake's way of life of viewing Gu Meng Meng as a VR projection was the revived Wabi. This time, he did not challenge Snake. Hey, little female. Are you the new sacred maiden of the Snake King Valley? Gu Meng Meng pointed at her own nose and looked at Wabi. Saintess. Me. Wabi nodded and said, I heard that you replaced Ellie and became the most respected female in the Snake King Valley. Gu Mengmeng turned to look at Snake awkwardly and said, "Really? Why haven't I heard of this before?" Snake went forward and hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms. His gaze was sinister and unpredictable. He said, "My female is naturally the most respected. Not just the Snake King Valley, there is no other female more respected than you in the entire beast world." Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, "Great King, can you stop fooling around? At your age, not to mention being my grandfather, you can even be my ancestor. I don't dare to claim connections with you." Chapter 564. Gu Mengmeng shrank her neck and did not have the guts to say, "You are so smart." She laughed awkwardly and said, "I am not from the snake tribe. It is not good to make me a saintess, right?" Snake raised his brows and said, "Why is my female not from the snake tribe?" Gu Mingming's face fell and she said, "Great King, you should know your limits when joking. I am a married woman, you will be punished by the heavens for teasing me like this." Snakel chuckled and said, "What kind of divine punishment? Will it be lightning from the sky or fire from the god of fire? Or else, cut open my chest and take out my gallbladder?" Gu Mengmeng twitched her lips and let out a disdainful "ah." She thought to herself, "I have been waiting for you to release me from the Snake King Valley as an old palace maid when you pardon the world. If I become a saintess, would I still be able to leave? I am not a fool if I don't do it." Wabi walked forward and placed his arm over Gu Mingming's shoulder. He smiled and said, "I am younger than him by a full 200 years. Although I am not as powerful as him now, I can't guarantee that I will improve by leaps and bounds after a few rounds of dual cultivation with you. When that time comes, I will replace him as the Snake King and ensure that your position as a saintess will last for generations to come. How about that?" Gu Mengmeng was disgusted and she stared at that pile of sh*t with a look of disdain. Snake's face darkened to the extreme and he really wanted to just release his beast pressure and squash Wabi to death. But thinking of her pale and uncomfortable face the previous time, Snake forced himself to bear with it. He only reached out one hand and grabbed Wabi's wrist, twisting his hand behind his back in an anti-ergonomic way. He said in a cold voice, "I told you before, Tu Meng hates snakes, hates sh*t, hates snakes that look like sh*t. You still dare to use your dirty hand to touch her, what if you hurt her?" Although Wabi was a snake, the distribution of his bones in human form was not much different from humans. So Snake's hair was still very painful for him. But with his ability to withstand blows from battling with Snake for the past 800 years, this level of pain was probably just a joke. So he did not care much and continued grumbling, "Sigh, don't the Snake King Valley saintess always choose powerful males to help them break through the third level boundary? Why can't I touch Tu Meng?" The veins on Snake's forehead popped out and his temples throbbed. His pupils darkened at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if his green pupils were filled with poison. "Just one look from him was enough to kill you. Tu Meng is my special title. Are you even worthy of calling me that?" As Snake spoke, he threw away Wabi's arm and turned to clamp down on his jaw, forcing his mouth open and reaching for his tongue. Wabi was a snake and had the nature of a snake. After fighting with Snake for 800 years, Wabi was probably even clearer than Snake himself about when Snake was just entertaining himself and when he was really killing in rage. He knew that Snake was really angry now. If he did not use his trump card, he might really die in Snake's hands. So he suddenly transformed into a giant python and used the change in his body size to break free from Snake's restraint. Then, with lightning speed, he attacked Snake first to gain the upper hand. Snake laughed coldly. Gu Mengmeng could even faintly see his hair fluttering in the wind. It was the kind of entrance scene of a martial arts leader. Chapter 565. Gu Meng Meng stealthily took a step back, then another, then, Snake found out. With a flick of his snake tail, Snake threw Wabi far away. As he sprinted towards Gu Meng Meng, he transformed into his human form. By the time he reached Gu Meng Meng, he was already that perfect and flawless snake. His dark green eyes glowed with a faint light, clearly still angry. He wrapped his arms around Gu Meng Meng's waist and didn't grab her wrist, because he knew that he might not be able to control his strength precisely after the battle. Her wrist was so thin, if he exerted even a little force, it would break. Although she would look good breaking her wrist, the process might be a little painful. He didn't like it when she was in pain, hurt, frowning and despondent, and even more so when she was deep in thought, she wasn't thinking about him. Where to? Especially when he didn't like the way she always gave off the feeling that she wanted to leave his side. Was she the same as that woman? She desperately wanted to return to that world, while Gu Meng Meng desperately wanted to return to her partners and children. Why couldn't they return to him? The dangerous aura emanating from Snake was too strong. Looking at the almost crippled Wabi behind him, who would dare to defy him at this moment? Gu Meng Meng gave a timid smile and said, "I saw that the two of you were having a good time sparring, so I made some space for you." Oh. Snake laughed coldly and asked, "Where do you intend to make space for yourself?" Gu Meng Meng kept quiet. She didn't have the courage to say, "Of course the further the better." Snake's head tilted 45 degrees downwards, his gaze unfathomable as he looked at Wabi, who was struggling to move. "Don't worry, with me around, no one can hurt you, and no one can touch you." Yes, 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 yes. Gu Meng Meng smiled apologetically. Seeing Wabi on the verge of death yet still fuming, she broke out in cold sweat. Once a person was nervous, their stomach would hurt. That twisting pain instantly made Gu Meng Meng unable to straighten her back. F***K, she was becoming more and more terrified. She was just watching others fight and she was already so scared at the start. Gu Meng Meng cursed herself in her heart while shaking her head helplessly. But, why did this feel so familiar? Gu Meng Meng lowered her head, instantly dumbfounded. His face first turned pale, then red, matching the color of the blood flowing down from between his legs. "Aunt, you really are my dear aunt. No matter where I am, your concern is always so. And, it's impossible to ignore." Snake felt something in his body stirring restlessly, and the closer he got to Gu Meng Meng, the more obvious it became. When the blood between her legs trickled down, the crimson color instantly stung his eyes. Damn it! Did he accidentally injure her when he was fighting with Wabi? He was already guarding against Wabi from getting close to her. Was she the one who injured him? I was too focused and accidentally bumped into it. Snake's face was ghastly pale and he wanted to lift Gu Meng Meng's dress. Gu Meng Meng was shocked. She covered her dress with both hands and said, "What are you doing?" "Check the wound," Snake replied with a frown. Gu Meng Meng blushed and stuttered. She tried her best to protect her dress and said, that. "I'm fine, I'm really fine." Don't lift my dress. You will be punished for teasing a married woman." Snake gritted his teeth and said coldly, "I am not afraid." Chapter 566. Ha! Snakel sneered and ignored Gu Meng Meng's resistance. He directly carried her up and walked like the wind. He did not look at Gu Meng Meng again and only said coldly, "You look for Elvis when you're sad and Leah when you're injured, then when will you think of looking for me?" Gu Meng Meng was completely dumbfounded. She had been breastfeeding after giving birth, so her period had not come. Later on, the children were given complimentary foods, but they were not really weaned. She would always squeeze out some milk for the children to drink once a day to supplement their nutrition. The real weaning of the wolf pups was when she participated in that beauty pageant. Maybe it was because she was too busy and messed up her biological clock so Great Aunt did not come. She had almost forgotten about this matter. Who knew that it would make such a grand and dazzling appearance today? But it was just Great Aunt. Why was Snake so angry, as if he had been cuckolded? Before Gu Meng Meng could understand what was going on, Snake had already brought her back to the cave. There was a beast skin laid on the ground and he placed her on it. His pupils were in a vertical state with only a slit. She could not tell how angry he was. Gu Meng Meng also could not figure out why Snake was so angry. Was it because she wanted to see Leah because of her period, or because Wabiai's challenge today had angered him? This Wabiai was in a state where he would challenge anyone he could move for the past 800 years. Gu Meng Meng felt that it was unlikely that he could come up with any new tricks to anger Snake. Was it because she wanted to see Leah? Was there a need to be so angry? That. Gu Meng Meng carefully broke the silence. Snake turned around with a sharp gaze. Seeing Gu Meng Meng shrinking her neck in fright, he turned his head away again. He felt aggrieved and his chest was burning, but his tone was much gentler. Later on, when you don't bleed so much, I'll feed you some of my blood to replenish your energy. Gu Meng Meng smiled stiffly. Great King, have you forgotten? Your blood is highly toxic and does not have the same effect as the black chicken white phoenix pill. Snake glanced sideways. His pupils were thicker than before. Maybe he was not so angry anymore. You have the antibodies in your body and I will detoxify you. It's only nourishing, it's not fatal. Snake said, do you know how many people dream of obtaining the blood of the Beast King? Gu Meng Meng looked at Snake's "you wicked slave, hurry up and thank me" expression and was at a loss for words. She hesitated for a moment before continuing, I'm just having my period. I don't think there's a need to supplement me like this, right? Great Aunt. Snake frowned and his face froze for a moment. Then, he suddenly recalled the relevant scenes of his mother Beast in heat from the depths of his memory. Awkward, Gu Meng Meng could almost see crows flying over Snake's head. Snake cleared his throat and said, female estrus is an important matter. Also needs to be replenished. With that, he stood up abruptly and paced around on the spot. Then, he walked back and looked at Gu Meng Meng condescendingly. He said sternly, looking for Leah the moment you're in heat, are you in a hurry to mate? Gu Meng Meng held her forehead and said, Leah knows how to make sanitary pads. I want sanitary pads. Snake was stunned again and did not say anything. He just turned around and walked out. You can't blame him, you really can't blame him. Chapter 567. Snake raised his head and shot a look at the colorful snakes guarding the entrance. Immediately, a few little snakes slithered out. Not long after, Leo was brought over with a huge pot in his hands. Even from afar, Gu Meng Meng could smell a gingery scent. Li's state did not seem like he was being imprisoned by someone at all. Instead, he looked like someone who cooked a pot of soup at the entrance of the cave and then brought it in. Snake knew that Gu Meng Meng was afraid of the cold, different from him. So even if the fire would dry out the cave and make him uncomfortable, he still kept the fire burning for 24 hours. So after Leah came in, he placed the pot on the fire pile with ease. Then, he said as he fiddled with it, here, this is the only dish that Elvis can bring out. You haven't had it since your confinement, right? Gu Meng Meng's heart warmed. Even if it was just boiling ginger slices in water, Elvis's strict requirements for the thickness of the ginger slices were always the same. In order to cook the taste that she had praised, he was almost to the point of nitpicking. Her heart was always warm. There's ginger here. Gu Meng Meng took over the small bowl that Leah handed to her. She took a sip and sighed, "Ah, I'm alive again." Leah smiled gently and rubbed Gu Mingming's little head gently. Then, he turned to look at Snake and asked, "Can I hunt here?" Snake frowned and said, "Didn't I provide all the food for you? If you're not full, then go hungry. Settle Tuming's matter first. She wants her sanitary pad. Hurry and hand it over, don't force me to do it." Leah held back his laughter and glanced sideways at Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng looked back at Leah with an expression of, "I know how speechless you are." Leah replied with an expression of, "You still understand me." The two of them did not say a word and just looked at each other with a faint smile. But they could read the meaning in each other's eyes. Snake felt frustrated for no reason. This was the reason why he did not allow Gu Mengmeng to see Elvis and Leah. There seemed to be a strange atmosphere between them, isolating him from them. Snake's face turned cold and he said, "I don't want to kill you on Tuming's account. But my patience is limited. Hurry up and hand over the sanitary pad and get lost." Leah sighed, as if he was not afraid of Snake in the slightest. He clicked his tongue and said, "Every time you send the prey here, they are all minced into pieces. Those beast skins can't even be used anymore. I need fresh, clean, and soft animal skin to make a sanitary pad for Mang Mang. So please allow me to hunt here." Snake waved his hand impatiently and said, "Up to you. Get lost, I already want to kill someone." Leah shrugged his shoulders helplessly and said, "If you want Meng Meng to accept you, you have to get used to getting along with me and Elvis. Meng Meng cares a lot about her family. If you always show that you will hurt her family, she will not like you." The veins on Snakel's forehead throbbed as he stared at Leah with narrowed eyes. Snake did not release his aura, but Leah, who was under the hierarchy, could not help but feel a chill down his spine. Then, Leah turned around and ran, directly burrowing into Gu Mingming's arms. In his half-orc form, he curled up behind Gu Mengmeng, wrapping his furry big tail around Gu Mingming's waist. He peeked out half his head from Gu Mingming's shoulder and complained pitifully, "Sob sob sob, Meng Meng, I'm so scared." Aside from the topic, author, Leah, you are after all the great witch doctor of Saint Nazir, the ninth highness of Sauter, can you have some face? Where's your pride? Where's your pride? Leah sneered, "Want face in front of Meng Meng? Want pride? Want pride? Are you stupid or am I stupid?" Chapter 568. Snake paused, feeling as if he was being framed. Gu Mengmeng couldn't help but laugh at Snake's infuriated look. She shook her head and sighed, "Leah has always been timid, don't scare him." As Gu Mengmeng said, she pulled Leah into her arms from behind and patted his back lightly, "You drama queen, stop acting. Snake won't really do anything to you." Leah felt extremely comfortable being coaxed by Gu Mengmeng. He squinted his eyes at Snake, his sly smile carrying a hint of provocation and complacency. Seeing how Snake's green eyes were about to spit fire, his mood was exceptionally good. Raising his head, he kissed Gu Mingming's little chin, then stood up and gently hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms, saying, "All right, I'll listen to you. I won't fool around anymore." Lee's hugs were always gentle and warm. Gu Mengmeng hugged Leah back, then asked, "Is your body okay? Can you hunt?" Gu Mengmeng knew that although Snake had no intention of taking Elvis and Lee's lives, he still used snake venom on them to weaken their bodies just in case, so that they could not escape with Gu Mengmeng. Leah raised his brows, gently hooked Gu Mingming's chin, and said with slight anger, "In your heart, am I so weak that I can't even deal with a mere wild beast?" Gu Mengmeng smiled in a fawning manner, saying, No, I'm just worried about you." Leah pinched Gu Mingming's little nose and shook it lightly, saying, "Don't worry blindly, lie down and wait for me to come back, don't move. If I come back later and see this place like a slaughterhouse, I won't let you off, understand?" Gu Mengmeng nodded, saying, "Yes." Leah hugged Gu Meng Meng for a while more before standing up to walk out. When he passed by Snake, he gave him a bright smile and said plainly, "In the future, you must get along well with Elvis and me, okay? Or else, you will be the one at a disadvantage, because Ming Ming's heart is biased towards us." "All the best." Snake just clenched his fists, his body stiff as he stared at Leah, swishing his big tail as he walked out of the cave step by step. Gu Meng Meng chuckled, "Stop staring, he's just like that. I mean no harm." Snake turned around and looked at Gu Meng Meng. "He threatened you." Gu Meng Meng blinked her eyes and looked at Snake as if she had lost her memory. Snake stepped forward and said, "He said he won't let you off." "Why aren't you angry?" Gu Meng Meng smiled sweetly. "Why should I be angry?" Snake's face was cold as he said, "Every time I threaten you to eat them up, you always argue with me." Gu Meng Meng said, "How can that be the same?" What Leah meant by not letting me off was probably that he would not allow me to move around before my period ended. I would have to lie on the bed for 7 whole days. Life was hopeless. What difference was there between me and a salted fish? But I know that his punishments are carried out on the basis of loving me and protecting me. He and Elvis would never do anything to make me sad. Snake frowned and asked, "If I really eat them, will you be sad?" Gu Meng Meng kept her smile and said seriously, "My family is my life. I will fight to the death with anyone who dares to touch my family." Chapter 569. Gu Meng Meng chuckled and asked, "Then do you want to be my grandfather or great-grandfather?" Snake's face was cold. The atmosphere was instantly destroyed by Gu Meng Meng, but for some reason, he did not feel angry. Instead, he felt that this little girl who always talked back and found trouble with him was extremely pleasing to the eye even when she was mocking him. Snorting, Snake used a gentle tone that even he could not understand and said, "Are you talking about my age again?" Gu Meng Meng did not deny it and just smiled. "I have no choice. You are too perfect in other aspects. This is the only thing I can use to attack you." Perfect. Snake's eyes were fixed on Gu Meng Meng and he was momentarily dazed. His life was so long, boring and unbearable. He did not know how others saw him because he felt that all the lives in this world were too boring and too mediocre. But he himself knew how much he hated himself and how much he wished that he could disappear. But what could he do? There was actually no one in this world who could kill him. Day after day of anticipating death, even his hatred towards this life was slowly being erased. But she said, "He was perfect." What kind of expression is that? Gu Meng Meng gave a look of disdain. "Don't tell me that. This is not the life I want. I will beat you up." Snake chuckled. "You can't beat me." Gu Meng Meng raised her head and said indignantly, "Who said that?" "I am the mighty messenger of the beast deity." Snake mimicked Leah and rubbed Gu Meng Meng's little head. The corners of his lips curled up. Yeah, it did feel good. Meeting her proud and clear big eyes, Snake said calmly, "There are 2 messengers of the beast deity, but the beast king is only me." Gu Meng Meng smacked her lips. "See, you are showing off your perfect life again." Sigh, all right, mighty beast king, you are the most honorable." Snake seemed to be deliberately teasing Gu Meng Meng. He tilted his head and looked at her with disdain. He said word by word, "Oh, this is not the life I want." Gu Meng Meng waved her fist and punched Snake's chest. With a face full of anger and laughter, she said, "Sigh, do you know that you are really annoying like this?" Snake smiled and asked, "Why?" Gu Meng Meng said, "Do you know about celebrities?" Snake nodded. In his memory, the mother beast had mentioned it to his father and other partners when she was reminiscing about the past countless times. Gu Meng Meng continued, "In this world, there's a type of people called the second generation of celebrities. Because their parents are celebrities, they receive the attention of others the moment they are born and enjoy all kinds of privileges. Entering the entertainment industry was also an illusion of having deep connections. Green lights and lightning flashes along the way. Then, when you were earning money that some people couldn't even earn in their entire lives, while counting the money, you would say, "Oh, this isn't the life I wanted at all. I hope everyone remembers me because of my hard work, and not because I'm XXX's son or daughter. If not for your parents being famous, who do you think you are?" It's the most disgusting to take advantage of someone and still act like a loser. Snake did not quite understand. He tilted his head and looked at Gu Meng Meng. "I'm not a celebrity." Chapter 570. Blessed by Nature. Snake toyed with Gu Mengmeng's adjective. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "Of course. Do you know? No one dared to provoke my hubby before he mated. After he mated, he immediately rose to the 4th level. Yeah, the 4th level might not be much in your eyes. But it's already very impressive outside, do you understand?" Snake laughed in disdain. The 4th level was considered trash. Gu Mengmeng rolled her eyes at Snake in disdain and continued, "When I was trapped in solder by coal, my hubby, a 4th level beast, led Leah, a 3rd level beast and the warriors in the tribe to fight with coal and the rest. Solder had a total of 3 5th level beasts. In the end, they were still beaten down by my hubby. Moreover, my hubby even leveled up during the battle. Although he did not say it, I know that it was not easy to level up. I don't know how many times he was on the brink of death, how many times he clenched his teeth and how many times he crawled out from a pile of corpses to level up." Snake laughed coldly and said, "If he couldn't handle it, it only proves that he was too weak." Gu Mengmeng hissed and looked at Snake in dissatisfaction. Snake shrugged and said, "He was originally weak. Not to mention me, he couldn't even defeat Wabi. Gu Mengmeng pouted and said, "That's because you poisoned him." Snake did not feel that there was a problem at all and answered honestly, he couldn't resist the poison because he didn't have the ability. Gu Mengmeng clenched her teeth and really wanted to bite Snake to death. But thinking of the poison in his body, Gu Mengmeng held back. Smacking her lips, Gu Mengmeng continued, "I wanted to praise you but you don't look like you need it. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore in case I die of anger." Snake was taken aback. He cleared his throat and his gaze drifted to the side. With a guilty look, he said, "He can't defeat Wabi because Wabi is too strong, not because he is too weak. After all, Wabi is an opponent that I personally trained for 800 years. If he were to be placed outside, no one would be able to defeat him." Trained? When Gu Mengmeng heard this keyword, her body could not help but tremble. She suddenly felt like laughing and her eyes lit up. Oh, no wonder Wabi wanted Snake to give him an explanation the moment he saw her. Just thinking about it makes me a little excited. The image, was probably, matcha-flavored poop. Gu Mengmeng twitched her lips, her interest instantly waning and she did not continue thinking about it. So. Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng from the corner of his eye, his expression saying, "Come and flatter me." Gu Mengmeng chuckled. As a reward for her wild imagination, Gu Mengmeng nodded her head and continued, "But my hubby is so valiant, majestic, brave and extraordinary." Gu Mengmeng wanted to use a few more adjectives, but when she saw the increasingly impatient expression on Snake's face, she held back and continued, "Males can't even take one blow from you. Tell me, if you aren't blessed by the heavens, then what are you? You're like a pay-to-win warrior in a game. Not only do you have top-notch equipment and an awesome ID, but you also have a cheat code." Snake's smile stiffened as he listened. Although he did not understand a lot of the words, but, were they praising him? Why did it sound so awkward? Looking at her serious face, she did not look like she was fooling him, but, the more he listened, the more he felt something was wrong. Chapter 571. Snake did not look back at Gu Meng's words because Leah had already returned. He knew that Lee's last action at the door was a demonstration to him. He had never cared about this kind of opportunistic demonstration and provocation in the past 1,000 years. But this time, he clearly learned his lesson. Because he said, in the future, you must get along well with Elvis and me. Or else, you will be the one at a disadvantage, because Gu Meng's heart is biased towards us. In the future. This life that was going to be so long seemed to have become less terrible because of this word. Tuming's heart was always biased towards them. Then did that mean that he was at least in her heart? Although he felt depressed that he was not the one being biased towards, but at the same time, he also felt a little good, she already had him in her heart, right? Even her partner and beast pet could tell, but she did not notice at all. She even asked him if he wanted to be a grandfather or a great-grandfather. Idiot, he was, blessed by the heavens, a bug. Leah held a few pieces of tanned beast skin in his hands, which carried a faint smell of blood. It was not strong and could not cover up the sweet arousal smell on Gu Meng's body, but it still could not escape Snake's sensitive nose. Frowning, Snake expressed his dissatisfaction towards the piece of beast skin in Lee's hands. How could there be other smells on Tuming's body? That was a stain. Leah sneered and said, you also know that your prey in the Snake King Valley is not up to standard. My Gu Meng has never used such a low-quality sanitary pad before. Leah swayed his tail exaggeratedly and walked to sit in front of Gu Meng with his legs crossed. He then turned back to look at Snake and said, if it's convenient, call Elvis over. Gu Meng's stomach is not feeling well now and needs a warm hug. Snake's pupils turned vertical and revealed a murderous aura. His body was cold and could never be warmed up. He did not feel anything in the past, but now it had become a weakness that he could not mention. Ever since Gu Meng fell sick the last time, Leah had unintentionally said, your body is too cold and will worsen Gu Meng's condition. After that, he did not dare to hug Gu Meng in the cave anymore. Every night, he would sit not far away and watch her sleep. Even though he knew that there were colorful snakes guarding the door, he didn't dare to close his eyes for fear that someone would steal her away while he was asleep. If she was in his arms, he would be able to sleep peacefully, but his body was too cold, so every morning, he would pull Gu Meng out of the cave to play. He clearly liked the shade, but he purposely exposed himself to the sun. He only dared to hug her in his arms when his body had warmed up. Every single cell in his body was screaming in discomfort, but he was, damn it, enjoying this feeling. Now, this damn fox actually dared to use this matter to provoke him. Clenching his fists, he glared at the fox who was laughing recklessly. The venom on his fangs had already begun to secrete, but that damned fox still had a look of, I like it when you can't stand me and can't kill me on his face. Be nice to each other. Her heart is biased towards us. Snake deeply felt that his dignity as a beast king was being trampled on. He was furious and wanted to kill someone, but what resonated with him was actually a warm current spreading from his chest that had been sealed in ice for thousands of years. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.